Hey everyone, welcome. I am so happy to be back in my home office, just simply sitting here and not driving a car, not doing anything crazy, just having ready to do a podcast. Really excited. Make happy days today. That's what's going on.
Because that's never crazy. So let's talk about Ohio, who now has passed sports betting. It will go live. This makes me laugh. January 1st, 2023. Like, I don't know. Are they the last ones in the union to do it? Kev, would you know? I mean,
No, I don't think so. I think there's still several holdouts.
It's crazy to me, though, that, like, even that, they're holding out till 2023. Like, at this point, look, I get the pros and cons, but it just seems inevitable that every place is going to do it. And I just don't understand, like, the ones that are lagging behind.
Well, it took New York forever. Remember, anybody with an IP address in New York State couldn't bet in New Jersey because New Jersey is illegal. I mean, it's dumb. It's like it's an opportunity to make money for these states.
There's things. There's moral conflicts. There's all sorts of things happening.
Oh, please.
No, but it's the real. I mean, that's why.
Okay, but I mean, again, I understand the moral conflicts, but there's same moral conflicts if Mike goes around and collects at the office for like a football ticket, or I do a pool for the Super Bowl and I take boxes. Those are all going on every day of the week, no matter what you do.
The moral conflicts and hypocrisy have never collided.
Well,
absolutely is something that occurs.
If you're talking about moral conflicts, then the state should never provide a liquor license for a bar because people are alcoholics and die in vehicular homicide and DWIs and all that stuff. I mean,
this is the weird part. Like what Mike said is true. If you're a state like Ohio, right? People in Ohio are betting somewhere anyhow right now. They're going online. They're going out of state. You might as well collect that money in your state.
Let's go here. How old were you when you laid your first bet? I know I was 7 years old. 7 years old. I played my first football card.
Nice.
I was 13 years old, and we had somebody place a horse racing bet at OTB. So I was 13.
My dad's brother was a very famous New Water Math and everything that wrote for the Philadelphia Bulletin at the time, and it was a sports journalist in the great tradition of my family, I guess, in sports journalism now. But he was a sports journalist, wrote for the Philadelphia Bulletin, covered the racetrack at Garden State track. I went with him all the time, and
I've heard stories about how degenerate of a gambler Walter Matthau was. First bet I ever made was on a football card, but it was not until I was like over the age of 18. So,
yeah. Well, a lot of people worked in the auto industry in Michigan, and those cards were everywhere. And so, my best friend's dad would bring home, and he'd bring home like 5 or 6 of the cards,
right?
And he would play 3 of them. Then he had 3 left over, and he would the older kids would get them first, but sometimes the older kids didn't want to play. And
who actually was fronting that money, though? Like when you gave the money to John and John gave you the ticket, who was John giving that money to?
John was fronting the money because
but he wasn't printing the tickets. Like I always wondered.
No.
Well, I mean, I don't know. As I grew older, I assumed it was organized crime, but I don't really know.
No, I'm with Kevin. I think it was organized crime.
But it was. I remember thinking when I first did it. Because when you're, second grade, you think it seems easy. You just got to pick 4 winners. You get points. And the lure of points when you're 7 is great.
Oh yeah. Listen, when I was in retail, I had an older gentleman who I worked with. His son-in-law had bought the whole company. Every Sunday, he would give me a baseball ticket, and I would be like, "I'm going to clean up on this. I know so much about baseball," and I maybe won it once.
But the odds on that card, remember, it was you pick four teams, and it was 10-1.
9-1.
9-1, right?
Yeah, it was 9-1. It wasn't 10-1.
So,
which is so odd, also.
A 14 parlay now is like what, like 25-1 or something like that. It's like, the odds are. I mean, you just got ripped. But
it really is hard to win a 14 parlay. That is the point.
Yeah. Oh, it really is. But back then, we didn't. The world didn't understand. At least, I mean, I'm sure that the people who set those up understood. But the common bettor never considered the idea of the mathematics of it all.
Right.
No, and back then there wasn't as much garbage time with the way teams would back off on defense. That didn't really happen. Like it's different now because now the way everything is, everybody's looking at plays that happened 5 minutes before the game ended as to why they lost their bet. Where back then nobody was looking at that.
Well, and again, none of that has anything to do with it. Like when you're in the actual industry, it's just all math. Like they don't, injuries are always talked about, and that's the lure for bettors.
Right.
But the people who are setting the odds and those kind of things, they're just adjusting the mathematics of it all. They're not really paying attention, and they're just trying to get it. It's just the amount that's being bet that they're paying attention to.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
Oh my God.
Kevin, didn't you say something along the lines to me, or maybe it was you, but somebody recently said to me that, that the gambling places are having a real hard time with hockey because of the empty net goals?
Yeah, well, yeah, because the take is not as strong as they thought it would be. And the reason the take is not as strong as bettors, like the industry doesn't care that there's empty net goals, but bettors are discouraged by the score changing dramatically at the end of the game. So, that more people are getting involved in those prop bets more than, trying to pick who won. Yeah. And it's weird. Like, betting reflects, true favorites in the NFL. Like, but in hockey, it doesn't really. Like, they most often just take the home team and say they're favored by a goal and a half, unless the team is really bad. Like, it's I don't know. And then they manipulate the odds so that it's like I look at most of the bets in hockey, and I'm not a bettor, but if I look at them, I say, I don't want either team. Yeah, either the bads or either the odds are so bad that you wouldn't want to bet the favorite, or the team's just not good enough. So
I'll tell you what the one thing I've learned, and whether this helps somebody or not out there. People will look at games and they'll be like Kevin said, I can't win with that. Like, it's not even worth betting. So they will augment their bet to try and pull in something more, whether that's adding another team or changing, and that's where they sort of, I think, get you a little bit.
Seems like the fun to me is in picking players who are going to score goals. If I don't bet hockey at all. Honestly, I don't. But when I talk to people who do, if I'm going to bet, I'd rather do something like black.
Yeah, I mean that's and they need the equivalent in hockey of in the NFL where you can bet the parlay where so and so gets rushes for 100 and you get 75 yards passing and the quarterback throws for 250, and then you get like 20-1 odds and you can turn a $10 bet into $116 like that. Those are the bets that I think everybody kind of likes. And in hockey, we sort of have them, but not quite the same.
They haven't quite perfected it yet, I don't think. I mean, I like the minute-to-minute betting. Like, if you could bet who wins the face off and stuff like that. That to me is the more fun thing to do.
But the aspect of betting we can once we start the show that I think the NHL has to get with is the injury revealing situation. Yes, they have to, because these companies, FanDuel and DraftKings, will bail on the NHL if the NHL doesn't provide them accurate information on the injuries of players.
It is going to be interesting. A lot of people, again, and all my knowledge is based on having written in there and hearing what the people there that run those sites say. But they are frustrated with that because, again, they don't care, but the people who bet care because they think it's important. And so it'll be interesting.
Something else you might not bet if we hear tonight, like, I don't know, 3 hours before game time, hey, Shesterkin might not play.
Correct.
It's like, oh, hold on, I may not bet this now.
Well, plus those kind of things increase the handle. Yeah. Like if something happens dramatically, instead of getting, and this is, not even close, but, instead of getting 100,000 bet on the game, if Shesterkin doesn't play, there might be 500,000 bet on the game.
Right.
Because people will kind of.
They've got an inside scoop or something like that.
Well, not even inside scoop, but they
No,
just feel like
they're like, well, that's the now.
yeah. I mean, all the people like Russ who feel like they really have a handle on it will say, well, there's no way they're going to beat them without Shesterkin.
Right.
So.
But those of us who've watched hockey knows that that probably means the Rangers would win tonight, and they would. It was the weirdest thing.
Or no matter who's in or who's out, they know they're not gonna. It doesn't matter. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we know one thing: if Mike Smith is in goal, we know he's going to give up 6 goals.
we'll talk about that. All right, Eddie. Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is. Let's call it Wednesday. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, June 1st, 2022.
I'm Michael Lagello, and if I could skate, I would be a better goalie than Mike Smith was last night.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and it's hard to screw up the first day of the month.
Yeah, June 1st.
I know you weren't confident, but you got it right.
Yeah. I'm Kevin Allen. Let's call it Hockey Buzz.
All right. Yeah, but I'm Mac, and you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that, this could be Wednesday or it could be orange for all I care. Like, to me, the day of the week means nothing. Whatever this is, it's June 1st, orange, 2022. I don't know. But anyway, that's where we are. The day of the week doesn't mean anything to us hockey people who are sitting here, except for the fact that we don't do podcasts on Saturdays and Sundays. But we're sitting here. And now, of course, speaking of gambling, I didn't gamble. Like I said, I don't gamble on hockey. But last night I was listening to XM as I was driving around, picking up my kid. And I heard the over-under for last night's game was 7. All right. So
in the first period. No.
Yeah, if you gambled on the over, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself.
I would have taken the over going into that game last night for sure.
7, yeah. I mean, I think that seems like.
Although I'm going to dispute Mike's opening salvo.
I was joking.
And I'm going to use as my eyewitness testimony one Wayne Gretzky, who said on the broadcast in that first period, not the second, in that first period, Mike Smith was actually good and he gave up 3 goals. And I would agree with that assessment just in the first period. Yeah.
I mean, and listen, I mean, this was a game. It was a fun game to watch. Like, I sat there, my daughter's home from college, and I said, listen, I don't often ask her to sit down and watch hockey with me, but she does once in a while. So she said, what are you watching tonight? I'm like, well, you got it. This is going to be good. I said, Mr. McKinnon, McDavid. I said, there's going to be goals scored. And she's a goalie. Even though she was a goalie, she likes goals scored. And I was not let down, like I was. She sat there and watched the whole game with me.
No, if you were looking for goals, you were happy with that game. If you were looking
exciting.
for
She
defense,
said at one point she's like, "Oh, they're getting killed 6-3." I'm like, it doesn't really matter. I said it doesn't matter. It's 6-3, 7-3, 7-4, 7-5, 7-6. It was incredible. I mean, the game, it was all that you wanted it to be. It was like the Calgary Edmonton part 2 of game 1, very similar to the game. In so many ways, but at the end of the day, we said, Kevin, you said the goalies will not let people down in this series. So I call you out a little bit on yesterday.
I think if we're gonna have a sore shoulder, I think we should all pat ourselves on the back for the narratives that we talked about yesterday, because a lot of them came to the fore. Now I didn't expect it to be a part 2 of the Edmonton Calgary 9-6 game in game 1, but that's pretty much what it was. It was throttle wide open, and I remember saying to Kevin, I said, this is, I think that if it's a track meet, that Colorado wouldn't lose out. And, you said that Edmonton probably would like a track meet. Well, the problem is in a track meet, their goaltender has to make a save. And in spite of the fact Mike Smith made some saves in the first period, by the time he left the game, not that it was.
Yeah. The goaltenders, neither one of them are none of the 4, really, played at the highest level, but that really wasn't a goaltending game last night. No. Like I wouldn't blame them. It wasn't like the puck was going in, and every goal you thought, oh my God, like what's that guy doing? I mean, it was just so wide open. And
I mean, Koskinen was pretty good actually.
So
I think that's pushing it back.
But
here's what I would say:
he gave up 1 goal?
2, I thought.
2. It was, it ended up. He left at 6 and it was 8.
Right.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't think either side was happy with exactly how the game was played out, but I think Edmonton believes it could win games like that. So
sure,
yeah,
because they showed yesterday that they can get goals beyond Connor McDavid. So
Yeah,
Well,
I
yeah.
did tune in for a minute in between periods, and Wayne Gretzky said, "Look, I'm the most offensive guy there is, but I'm telling you right now, somebody out there has got to play some defense if you want to win a Stanley Cup." And and he knows, like, he's right.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Those Edmonton teams, they were the most gifted offensive teams maybe in the history of hockey. But Kevin, as you've said a few times, they were able to shut it down.
Yeah.
They only could win when they lost to the Islanders the first time. The next time they played the Islanders, they played effective shutdown hockey, and that's how they won cups. And that's where I think Colorado can do that. I don't know if Edmonton can do that. And one of the things we talked about yesterday is if they put McDavid and Draisaitl together, they're a one-line team. And Russ, they were a one-line team, I thought.
I mean, I know Mick Kern took issue with me when I said it on Sirius, but I'm like, listen, this is essentially a one-line team, and it really still is.
It doesn't matter if they score 6 goals.
Listen, at the end of the day,
it can be a one-line team all they
no,
want.
hold on, hear me out. It does matter because this is like the best one line we've seen in a decade, right? Maybe since Tampa's in 06, or was that 04? 04. But at the end of the day, it's not enough to win a series like this because Colorado is balanced and they have defense that can keep up with anybody on Edmonton. And even though they're going to give up some goals and Kemper's going to give up some goals, there's no way Edmonton can sustain that.
Now, Derek Ryan scored a goal. They got a couple goals other than the top line. But I think essentially, if you're loading up Kane, Draisaitl, and McDavid, and like I said, if you can limit that line, then and that's easier said than done. But if you can, then you've won. Then you've won the battle. And the other thing, did anybody notice Connor McDavid running Nazem Kadri into the goal? I'm telling you, Kadri has, for his entire career, even when he was back to Toronto, got under the skin of McDavid. I don't know if he said something to him or whatever, but last night I thought McDavid sort of like got distracted by Kadri.
Here's the thing, though, about that. Like, I love that side of McDavid right now. Like, I didn't find it as distracting as much as he was distracted by him, as much as McDavid has shown me way more in these playoffs than I've ever seen before. Like, I mean, and I've always liked him as a player, but we've had our debates, and we talk jokingly say, I've said Austin Matthews is better than him, which I do think that at times he is. But right now,
he's not a better. I don't know if he's a better player.
But what we're seeing right now, if this is the McDavid we're going to see, if this level of intensity, we've never seen this from Austin Matthews. Like Austin Matthews has never shown this kind of level of intensity.
He started to this year. I mean, you couldn't really slag Austin Matthews for his performance.
No, but I'm not slagging him. I'm just saying I haven't seen many NHL players.
Level. It's a new level.
I haven't seen many NHL players show this level of intensity. McDavid shows.
No,
so it's another thing altogether.
But this is the thing. Okay. I don't expect the rest of the series, Kev, to go like this. I think they'll throttle down a little bit. Yeah. But when you have McDavid and Draisaitl playing at this level, and you give up 8 goals, that's my issue here. Do I dispute that Edmonton's got unbelievable offensive talent with Draisaitl and McDavid and Kane and Hyman throws in the goal here too, Nugent Hopkins? Yes, but they got to be able to stop the other team. And if Colorado continues to do this, this is not a 7-game series; it's a 4-game series.
It'll be 5.
I predicted 6, but I expected Edmonton to play better, like they did at the end of the Calgary series, to play like that, and they played like at the beginning of the Calgary series.
That's funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, normally I get on Russ for declaring as if he's for sure that it was going to be 5, but I actually agree with him. I said that yesterday that I thought it would be them at 5, but I don't know. They're going to try to play differently, and we saw in that first series after that game that it was a little bit different, and Mike Smith played better as he moved on. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think that goaltending is the issue here. Edmonton's defensive warts are showing, and I think Colorado is the one team that is capable of playing better. But the difference I see is if you were to take takeaways from that game, the X factor, the difference that the Oilers cannot match. Like, I think the offenses cancel each other out. I really do.
It's
but
Makar.
it's Makar. Yeah, there's nobody on the other team that comes close to that.
Right.
And he just can go, and he's kind of got that rover mentality that Victor Hedman has. He's everywhere. He's nowhere. He's there when you least expect him.
Yeah.
He's got a great sense of how to jump into play. People have compared him to Coffee. Coffee was all speed. Makar has got such incredible anticipation.
You know who I compare him to, Kev? A healthy, younger Erik Karlsson. He jumps into the rush.
He's a lot like that.
Yeah, he controls the play. He's not particularly great defensively in his own zone, but his defense is he possesses the puck and you can't get it away from him.
I think he is better defensively than Karlsson was at a younger age. But yeah, I mean to me that's what I saw last night. I just thought, Makar's the difference.
I saw one other thing too. Again, I laugh at the Islanders for that trade for Devin Taves. This man, with Girard out now, Devin Taves steps up and he steps right into that role, no problem. Offensive role, easy. Moving around the puck on the power play, no problem. Getting points.
And Russ, you want to talk about the best bang for the buck in terms of a contract? Devin Taves, $4.1 million for 2 more years. My goodness,
that was a gift. That was a gift.
Hey, Lou, you could have traded somebody else and trading Devin Taves.
Devin Taves never becomes what he becomes in Colorado if he stays on the island, guys. It's like
he was already getting there.
No.
It's easy to sit there and say that. And Devin Taves was a great defenseman on the island too. But I do think he has benefited from playing with Cale Makar. Like I do think that.
Well,
I'm not disputing that. It's not like a Matt Carl playing with Chris Pronger.
Right, it's not like that.
Matt Carl goes someplace else and he's a 5th defenseman. Devin Taves was a top 3 defenseman on the Islanders before
he's a top 4 defenseman, no questions asked. I agree with you, but I'm not going to compare him to Matt.
Yeah,
Now,
I know your point, Dak, but I think he would have gained more notoriety because they would have still traded Leddy. Because he was making more money. Somebody that 2 defensemen had to go, so I think he would have been their number 1 defenseman.
I want to bring up something. I want to get to something too really quickly about this thing. So Makar's goal and at the end of the period, fascinating. First of all, like obviously offsides, and then wait, it's not because of the touch rule, which is the strangest, which is one of the more confusing things for outside fans. Like I was trying to explain this to my daughter. Like I was trying to explain why this wasn't offsides because, and everybody's, and even I think the NBC group or the ESPN group was trying.
Ray Ferraro did a good job of explaining it.
They were explaining it to Wayne Gretzky. That's how confusing it is. That's what I'm saying. I mean, this is a really confusing penalty play, but it wasn't offsides, which is astonishing. And not that I think Makar even tried to, but it was incredible.
It was all about control of the puck. It was all about if Makar had control of the puck crossing the blue line, then it would have been offside. But he had pushed it forward, and because he pushed it forward and he didn't have control, Nichushkin was allowed to tag up
to go back.
So once they explained it, the funny thing was Don Koharski couldn't explain it on the broadcast, and he's a referee.
Rule. Maybe Don hadn't really.
Well, it's a very it is not. It rivals the 2-line pass explaining when I was a kid to my girlfriend. Try to explain the 2-line pass, which always was confusing, but anyway, so
I give credit to Nichushkin, right?
Because 2-line pass left.
Nichushkin could have killed that whole sequence had he not known, but he knew. He immediately knew, hey, I got to get back. And that was a heads-up play by him.
Yeah, he knew. Yeah, he knew he had to get back anyway, Gress. I mean, I don't think he knew. He's
no. He knew he did the bare minimum to get back because I think he saw what happened on that play, and I think he knew the rule.
The best job I have to say done in terms of explaining that because I have access to Hockey Night in Canada. Ron McLean went to the video board and showed what was because he's a referee. He's been a referee.
Right.
Showed how the tag up, what the rule was, how he didn't have control, and that was the reason why it counted. And it was great. So that's not to rip on TNT because I think they did a fine job. But
I don't know who's doing the play-by-play, but they did explain it. I thought it was Ferraro, but
it was Keith Jones.
No, they explained it well, and it was. But again, it brought up again. Like I got the text from people, and because I become the champion of this ridiculous challenge penalty rule. Like again, that happens, right? Again, the NHL should just want to get it right. The NHL should not. The team should not have to challenge that as an offsides play. It should be.
But you don't think they got it right? I think they.
No,
did.
they got it right, but they got it right, but they don't. They got it right because they were forced to look at it by the challenge, and otherwise, it was very confusing. And then even in that situation, and then slapping another penalty at Edmonton for making the NHL get it right is still feels so ridiculous to me.
But okay, so that
Kevin, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think even after it was explained and most people realized that the right call was made, but not everybody. I mean, what I was struck by is in the morning and looking at it, it was almost a microcosm of society, because we all know that even with overwhelming facts, there are people who believe that something happened in 2020 that they don't accept. And that's what happened last night. When I was looking at social media, there were people who watched everything that we all did. And most of us, even if most of us thought differently when the play was made, once they explained it, we go, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I did hear that. It makes some sense. But there's some people who just said, no, that's totally wrong, even with that evidence. So
everybody in the city of Edmonton was on that negative.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I get it. And I think what struck me about all that is that if a rule feels that wrong, then maybe something ought to be said about it.
Right.
Because it did feel like at first blush, I think everybody saw that completely differently. So I mean, Wayne Gretzky, the video
will come back. The announcers also that goes coming back. That goes coming back. Right?
The video of Wayne Gretzky when that ruling was made was just priceless. Like
I know
he was stunned. Like that was, and then as X said, to pay that heavy price for that, and that was a turning point in the game. Like that ended up a 2-goal game. Right. So it was a horrible price to pay, and I do think, don't you think that at the next GM meeting we're going to talk about that? The gravity of that power play is something that I think you could hang your hat on if you wanted to say, we've got to do something about that.
Well, a challenge. See, the whole reason the penalty is being being assigned there is because they don't want teams to use that as a
But so who cares if it's an obviously controversial situation? Get it right. It's good. Just get.
I have one solution. My solution would be, so you basically like before a guy fouls out in basketball, to me this would be like, hey, you've got one and whatever you want to call it, demerit, whatever. And we're going to allow another challenge, but if you get another one, now it's going to be a power play. So maybe
a technical foul warning.
That would be like technical at that point. I would do it that way.
I think we're acting like we live in the dark ages. Like everyone isn't watching this game. This is the only game that's on TV. Toronto's watching this game. The announcers are saying, "Oh, that might have been offsides." They're looking at it because before it's even challenged, everyone's looking at it. We do not have to say a magical challenge.
No, we do. There's plenty of things that we miss.
Toronto's watching the game like they watched the Blake Coleman goal and got it wrong. So
what about the Shesterkin, where he clearly did an amazing job of covering up the goal that was, didn't have the right camera angle, and 5 minutes later they found the camera angle. We needed that. We didn't know that.
Right, I know that, but that wasn't. Was that a challenge because the goal? I forget.
It was a challenge because it was a no goal on the ice.
Challenged it.
Yeah, you couldn't see it because it was under his body, but it was clear.
So if Pittsburgh doesn't challenge that, the goal does not count. The NHL's perfectly fine with
that. Just before we get to Jan here, the other thing from the game was Kemper getting hurt, leaving the ice. Francouz comes in. Bednar this morning said, well, he could play tonight or he might be out for a while. And this is what I'm talking about. The subterfuge of the playoffs. You cannot do that. You cannot in the gambling world. So
they do it all right, Mike. They do it all regular season. I mean, you may say that the stakes are higher. They do it again.
We're talking about whether the rules should be changed or not.
Right. Well, I agree with you. Right. We've talked about it repeatedly. We all thought that with the gambling aspect taking on much more prevalence, that they would be forced to actually be transparent in terms of the injuries. And if anything, it's gone the inverse, and they've become more basically covered up in terms of what it is. I mean, look, the same thing happened. Barclay Goodrow. Oh no, we won't see him. We won't see him in Game 6, and then all of a sudden the next day, he's in the lineup. It's like, oh well, I heard from the trainers during the day he's able to play. I mean, really?
Yeah, and he knew nothing about it.
No.
Here's the thing about this, guys. Like,
that was my favorite part. I really didn't know. No, yeah,
I love that too. I know.
He might play next game, but he could be out for a while. Gee, can we nail you down there, Jared?
Gambling. Okay, I was one of the when gambling first hit the internet, and I was one of the big websites on the internet, and I refused to allow gambling advertisements on my website just because I just didn't want to go there. And I went to the NHL, and I said to them at the time, and I'll never forget this: what should I do in this situation? Like, because I said, listen, I want to be a website that you guys trust and think is admirable. What is your opinion on me taking in because there's more money in gambling advertising, right? I went to them and I said, what should I do? Because I'll take it on, but I want to make sure I wasn't pissing off anybody up top, right? Because we have guys working out there, credentialing and all that stuff. I want to make sure it was cool. And at the time they said to lay off of it. So I laid off of it. I did for a long time. I laid off of it. And then of course, obviously that's changed over time because they're involved with it as well. And I'm fine with gambling in sports. I have no problem with gambling in sports at all, but it has to, the gambling aspect has to take background to the sport itself. And the second you start reporting these injuries exactly, you've stopped that. You've actually put players' careers in jeopardy, all that kind of stuff by reporting these injuries. It just cannot happen.
For that, I shoot that the argument down because the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball all provide accurate information in terms of injuries. He's got Tommy John surgery. He's got an Achilles problem.
Put baseball away. Baseball is not like a one-on-one.
What about the NFL?
What about football? What about the NFL?
The NFL
you're required to say who's practiced, who hasn't practiced, who's practiced on a limited basis, who's questionable, who's doubtful. Right. All that information has to be reported, and if you don't, you get fined and potentially lose draft picks associated with it.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with all that stuff. Where I draw the line is like having to say this is a sprained left ankle or whatever, that kind of thing. That stuff is the stuff that I don't think
you have to say the injury in the NFL.
You have to say the injury in the NFL.
Right.
You have to say the injury.
I think it's horrendous that they have to say it. And
the argument that you make in the NFL is that not only does everyone then knows it, so if you're attacking that injury, you can try to protect the player. I mean, they've always said that in the NFL. Like the officials know it as well. So,
right.
So
I mean, there is that argument, I guess, but that's really like it's kind of cart after the horse type thing, or horse after the cart, or cart before the horse, or something. There's something ethically wrong with that too, Kevin, because it's like, if you're protecting a guy, but once the guy's hurt, we've seen what happens here. If Trouba doesn't eliminate Crosby, which is a perfectly legal hit, but if Trouba doesn't eliminate Crosby in that series probably goes a very different way, right? Pittsburgh probably wins that series. I think we can all agree on that. That series wasn't going anywhere.
I was at the Garden that night. There's no question Pittsburgh had the better of the play leading up to that moment,
and it changed everything, right? All right, so then I'm going to go even into the last series with Binnington and Kadri. That series seemed to have a whole lot of different vibe to it.
Well, I mean, when you're taking out a goaltender, which I believe Kadri did by pushing Rosen into Binnington. I mean,
I don't even know that he did. But regardless, it actually changes the course of things. I mean, so what I'm saying here is we cannot allow it. Great, you're getting penalized more because you hurt a guy who was already hurt. He's hurt again, right? I mean, isn't that the most important thing?
I mean, again, heck, in last Rangers Carolina game, Niederreiter rode what's his name,
Lindgren into the boards
with his behind. With his team, he knew it.
Go ahead.
Right.
In the bad old days before, when we used to get some information about injuries, but we always knew where guys were hurt because the opposing team would tell us. Like I remember covering the playoffs in the 80s, and when I remember one in particular where Mark Messier, everyone wrote he had rib injuries because the Flames, it was the rivalry series, told us, Messier's wearing a flak jacket because he's got broken ribs. And that's how we knew. So it's not like the other team doesn't already know what the injuries are. We just don't know. No.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, right. But in certain
that's the issue. That's
not helping the player, is what Kevin's saying. They know already who to target, where to target.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the issue. I mean, if the other team knows it, then the argument in terms of targeting a particular injury is moot. It's essentially, does the betting public, and you have somebody in the chat was saying, well, that's not the concern of the coach. No, it's the concern of the league The league has to be upfront in terms of what is going on in terms of information, because people are betting on these games. And if they don't want to do that, then don't take the money gambling.
Let's talk about the percentage of NFL fans that bet on games versus.
Actually, I've got breaking news here from Emily Kaplan. Right now, Braden Point is skating on an optional skate at the Garden. Just saying that.
Okay. Yeah. What was the point I was going to make? What were you just saying about the?
Kevin, what are the percentage of NFL fans that bet on games versus the percentage of NHL fans that bet on games? Way lower, right?
Well, the whole point is
that's the whole point now.
More NFL fans bet on games, right?
Yeah, but that's been a given for years. But the point now is they're attempting to grow it to the point where it becomes much more of a revenue stream.
I know what I was going to say, though. I mean, because you brought up a important point about how fans feel about it. As a guy that had dealt with this issue for many years as president of the Writers Association and having long discussions with Bill Daly on it, I can tell you a couple of things. Number one, Bill Daly, who is real reasonable to deal with on all levels of issues, is adamant about these issues. And number one is protection of players. He feels strongly that information is used by the opponent. But secondly, he believes that it's a HIPAA violation. He says it's really no one's business. And I disagree. I argued with him that it was not specifically in the contract, but inherent within the contract. That when you're an athlete, that some of your medical information, like I don't think we're entitled as fans to know whether you have an illness or some blood disorder or whatever. But we're de facto season ticket holders or shareholders because we buy the tickets on which the league exists.
Right.
So I think we're entitled to kind of know to make decisions on going to game or purchasing things based on injury information. And I made that argument, and Bill said, it's a good argument. However, I'm not buying it and all that stuff. But what I've discovered on all this is we are not supported by this, the writers, by the fan base. When you talk to fans in general, and I have written stories about this and had people comments, most fans think it's good that we don't know what the injuries are, and they don't need to know. Is basically what the thing. Now, the majority, not everyone, but the majority of people thinks that it's none of our business, and that they can live not knowing whether it's a hamstring injury or an ankle injury.
And that's because that's been the way for forever, Kev. But what I would suspect, and we'll get to the preview of the Rangers here. What I would suspect is if they continue to go down this road, like Freddie Anderson just announced this today, he had an MCL tear, and that was the reason that he was out the first 2 rounds. And nobody knew that. They said it was a lower body injury. Okay, prepare yourself for a lot of no lines on hockey games if the NHL is not more forthcoming in terms of the details of injuries, because the gambling public will not bet, or the companies will not put a line on these games if they don't think a certain key player is going to be playing.
No, well, I think that I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think they're upset again because they're not getting a lot of bets being laid, or as much as they had expected or hoped to get. So in order to do that, I think they need to make the bettor feel comfortable, and bettors feel comfortable, and they react. They react to injury news. Having written those betting stories after I left USA Today and I started working for them, what they tell you to make sure you get in there is all the latest injury news, because bettors react to that. So that's what they care about. Like, they don't really. They care about getting people to do that. But just one other element of this that I wanted to kind of touch on with regard to protecting the players. We see it in baseball all the time. The subtlety of, for example, I saw it last night in a Tigers game, a Detroit Tigers baseball game. The pitcher throws, and I know we've all seen this. The pitcher throws a pitch, and the catcher immediately bolts out and goes out there and summons the trainer. He's seen just a little thing on the pitcher in his motion that tells him something's wrong. Yeah. Well, that's the way it is in hockey too. When you're in the face-off circle and a guy's not taking a face-off the same way, you go back to your bench and say, the guy's got a bad wrist.
Yeah, but
he can't do his face off. So I do think the teams already know this information. Opponents do. So
the funny thing is, Kev, is that I've seen over the last few weeks a lot of catchers going to the mound with injury because it doesn't count against the number of visits. So they're using that as a sort of end around, even though, the pitcher may be hurt. I've seen the Yankees do that 3 or 4 times where, bring out the pitching coach, bring out the medical trainer, and then they say everything is okay, and it's not considered.
Well, not the ones I've seen. The pitchers have been out out the door.
We also have Draisaitl, who everyone thought was hurt, right? And when he got 17 points in 5 games.
He is hurt. He's still playing hurt.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Now, but, how hurt is he really? He
can't really shoot.
He's just killing it. He's just, let's get on to this Colorado. Let's get past this to the Rangers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, which start this evening. And
so Jan, let me just start with this. I think the whole Braden Point thing is subterfuge because I would I be surprised if he comes back at some point, but him optional skating is just to throw a loop to the Rangers. Like, we may have to plan for Braden Point. But the Rangers challenge against this team. There's no mistake that this team, they've won 2 Stanley Cups. I don't care if it was in the bubble or not. This is a hurdle. This is going to be a big challenge for the Rangers.
Absolutely. I wrote in my blogs, it's a major step up in class. They are not nearly as good as they were the last couple of years. That line of Gord and Coleman and Goudreau is gone. Right now, they've replaced it pretty nicely by bringing in Nick Paul for a ridiculously low price and Hagel for a much higher price, though Hagel they have under contract for several more years. Mm-hmm. That helps them. Losing Point is a material loss to them because he is their number 1 center. Anthony Cirelli is going to move up, though he hasn't really done much the first couple of series, and his offensive production kind of waned a bit more this year from what you normally would expect. But on the flip side, Steven Stamkos kind of turned back the clock with 42 goals and 64 assists. And Kucherov, I think, had 65 points or 64 points in 47 games this year. So we know how good he is, and we know how good Victor Hedman is. So, and they also have the guy who won the Conn Smythe in Vasilevsky between the pipes. So by no stretch of the imagination does any Ranger fan, and the Rangers themselves know just what they're going up against. And if they don't, they have a guy by the name of Barclay Goodrow who can give them chapter and verse in the locker room of just how good facing Tampa Bay is how hard it's going to be facing them.
It's a great point. They are definitely, you can argue that they're not as good as they were, and I thought they weren't as good as they were when this whole thing started. But then after you take out the President's Trophy winner in 4 straight, and you start getting confidence together, and you start getting better and better, and like you say, Hagel and Paul are looking pretty darn good, and Stamkos is way better than he was the last 2 seasons. You could argue that they're just as good, if not better than they were. Vasilevsky this is the best Vasilevsky has played in the playoffs, perhaps. He's really been he's always been good.
I did crunch the numbers right with Vasilevsky and Shesterkin, and I wrote about it on Sportsology, and it'll be interesting too because the Madison Square Garden's a pretty good home ice advantage for the Rangers, and they have home ice advantage in this series, and not enough people I think are talking about it, even though we've been kind of conditioned to say, it's not that big a deal. I think it is going to be a factor. But
Russ, can I say something about that real quick? It is a big deal because they got home ice advantage playing in the Metro Division. So they put a better record together in the Metro Division than Tampa could put together in the Atlantic Division, which to me is even makes the points the Rangers have even more impressive.
Shesterkin's faced 143 more shots, made 131 more saves. His save percentage is .928. Vasilevsky's is .932. If you go to Money Puck and you look at them, they're 1 and 2. It's unbelievable how close this goaltending matchup is and how great Vasilevsky has played lately. That it kind of reminds me of 2003. I covered that cup, and it was Brodeur against Giguère, and I'm expecting the same kind of matchup. I really am.
Well, if you throw out the first 4 games also, right, Shesterkin's numbers go through the roof. In last round, he had a 153 goals against, and I think a 173 goals against, like a 959 save percentage, right? So once he got past that game 4 where he got pulled, something clicked in, and he's clearly been a much better goalie. And then, to my opinion, defensively, he's going to be interesting. I do think, Bogosian and Cernak pairing off with McDonough and with Hedman is interesting. They're clearly stay-at-home defensemen. To me, Sergachev is by far their 3rd best defenseman. If somebody's going to have a big series for them, I think it's going to be Sergachev. For New York, it's going to be how much time does the 3rd pairing get, and also who are they paired up against, right? Where do we see Schneider and Braun? If they're matched up against the Stamkos line, that's a major advantage for Tampa Bay. So, they're going to shelter them the first 2 games. We'll see what happens when they go back to Tampa in terms of how they ended up putting the 3rd lines with Cooper and trying to make sure he gets the right matchups again.
Well, the one thing I'm curious about, because we talked about Trouba, laying out Crosby, and then he did the same thing to Seth Jarvis in Game 7. Who I'm not saying target in terms of he's going to take this guy out, but his big hit ability is a big factor with the Ranger defense. And if he knocks out Kucherov, knocks out Stamkos, that could be a turning point in the series. But
Mike, if it happens now, they're going to argue you've been advocating for it, and you're the reason why it's happened now. Because if I hear one more person claiming that both hits were illegal and seeing the Zapruder film frame by frame, I think I've probably seen each one about 100 times.
It's not like I'm saying he's Rafi Torres or something like that.
No, but listen,
again, they were legal hits. I mean, that's kind of what's going on.
But they're still getting targeted. They are legal hits, but they're getting targeted.
Well, that's not abnormal in the playoffs. I want to throw this to Kevin, because Kevin, here's what I see about the series, and just a little historically here. This kind of reminds me of, what was it? I think it was 78, 79 or 79, 70, the year before the Islanders won the Stanley Cup.
79 when Montreal won.
Right. When the Islanders faced the Oilers in the playoffs, or was it the first Oilers Stanley Cup? Anyway, there was that famous battle when it was the end of the Islanders dynasty, the beginning of the Oilers dynasty.
That was
83 when the Oilers ended up getting swept 4-0 against the Islanders.
The Oilers played the Islanders in like the first or second round a couple of years before that.
Yep.
But 83 when they lost in the final, that was sort of the passing of the torch when the Islanders won a lot of close games playing defensive hockey, and Edmonton learned that's the way we have to play to win a cup. And then they
Kevin. Could that slowly falling Islanders team be Tampa and could that slowly rise team be the Rangers? You know what I mean?
I think it could. Certainly. I agree with Jan with regard to and disagree a little bit with you about this team is not as good as it was, and I think they know that. But one difference, or one thing that is the same, is their will to win, and that's why I don't think home ice is going to be that big of a difference for them. I mean, I've been at Madison Square Garden. I know how intimidating it can be, but I think that's their strength, is their ability to play in those kind of environments. And that's what little advantage they have left. The Rangers are still trying to figure it out. They've got a really good team. They've had a really good season. They're a very confident bunch, but they don't know exactly what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. And the Lightning do understand what it takes. So
even though say something smart though, Kev, you know what he said? He said, "Look, I know we got a lot of young guys here, but with all these elimination games that we played and in these playoffs, this is their playoff experience now." And I do agree with that. I think I
do too, but I still think it's winning the cup is still different. Sure. They've had two good rounds with it. So I like this Ranger team, quite a bit. And I came up with a theory. I'd be interested to get Jan's take on this too. I ran it by Tom Laidlaw as well, and he actually completely agreed with me. He almost never agrees with me, but he did on this. I started to think about, if you go to high danger scoring chances, and I don't love all advanced stats, but I do love that stat because it's really been telling during the regular season. I have followed it, and the teams that give up too many chances, it does tend to hurt them. But my opinion on the Rangers is, I think it's almost calculated, and by that I mean this and it's the Hasek factor. If you remember back when Hasek played for Buffalo, the Buffalo Sabres took more chances than any team known to man because they had Hasek back there to save their bacon, and they weren't. They needed those chances to get as many goals as they had because they weren't an unbelievable offensive team. So by taking all those chances, they scored more goals. And I think that – go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say, but the Rangers, and then to go to Jan here, that Sabre team, their number one center was Mike Pekka. They had very little offense, so they had to take chances, but they had the comfort of having Hasek back there to save their ass. This Ranger team has offensive talent, Jan. I mean, Kreider and Zibanejad and Panarin. So they don't have to take as many chances, but they do have the safety net of Shesterkin being able to save their ass.
So I'll agree to an extent with Tom, and I'll disagree. I don't think they play that way particularly, but I do think they're comfortable knowing the fact that Shesterkin is back there to cover up any ails they may have. And what I mean by that is, as long as they give him a clear shot at the shot, they don't have a problem playing that way. What's different on this team that we saw in the last couple of years is the prior 2 years, they were a much more counter-attacking team. They used their speed to get through the neutral zone with a lot more cross-ice passes. The only time you really see it is twofold. One, you saw it on the goal the other night by Vetrano getting it to Kreider, who had the step. The other play you'll see a lot of times is they'll throw it deep down the boards and get the rebound off the boards and let Kreider get his speed. What you didn't see the first 2 rounds is you didn't see that cross-ice tape-to-tape pass to try to do it because teams squeezed the neutral zone. Pittsburgh did it. Carolina did it. What I'm looking forward to seeing here is I don't think Tampa plays the same style. They did do that a little bit to Florida, but I don't think defensively they necessarily play the same kind of 1-2-2 all the time where New York can't get through the neutral zone. What I think is going to be interesting is to see what can Zibanejad and Kreider, and especially Vetrano, who's got speed, do to the neutral zone, and then B, how much room do they give Panarin to create? If Tampa allows him to get into the offensive zone and curl and not have a guy step up on him, he's going to kill them finding the trailer to create odd man rushes and opportunities. If they do, then they're going to have the same kind of treatment, and Panarin's going to struggle against them the same way he did against Pittsburgh and Carolina.
Well, the one thing I do agree with Kevin is we don't know if they do that on purpose, but what I have noticed is a lot of times after these 5 bell saves that Shesterkin makes, whether it's Fox or whatever, they get the puck right up the ice because it's almost like, hey, there's this big pile up here. We got speed going the other way. We can get an odd man rush, and a lot of times they get a goal. And so it's been working for them, whether it's on purpose or not. So Kevin's right about that.
Right, but they are going to take up a step up against offense, right? So if you remember, right, Brendan Moore's main comment is he didn't have an elite goal scorer. That is clearly not the case right now. Because
that's what I wanted to talk about, James. I think that to me is that there's you nail it, because it's like having great scoring chances is one thing, having snipers with great scoring chances is another. And this Tampa has snipers with those great scoring chances. I mean, Rangers have given up a lot of great scoring chances for sure, but Tampa and the Penguins, when they had Crosby in the lineup early in the series, where the snipers were out, and then they changed a lot as the series went along. But so having all these snipers, Kucherov is just like.
But it doesn't matter. That's true where that hurt Carolina, but that doesn't matter on this play because you don't know when that play happens who's on the ice for Tampa. You don't know if it's Hedman or McDonough or if it's Cernak. And the point is, that's where the opportunistic Rangers have been beating these other teams, because you could pile up a whole list as to why the Rangers should lose, as far as, well, they don't match up this way and they don't do this way and they don't, but they do get opportunistic goals and goals at big times that kind of stun the other teams at times.
I do think that. Go ahead, Jan.
No, sorry. I unfortunately need to run, but one more point I wanted to make, and then I'll give you guys my prediction. So I wrote in the blog and somebody put it today, which I know. So the status, I think teams coming off long rests in the first game of a series are 0-7. The Rangers obviously are a little bit operating on fumes right now because of the quicker turnaround. To me, tonight, game 1 is a really important game for them. Granted, not that if they lose, they can't win, but winning tonight takes on increased importance, because I do think where it's going to hit them, the tiredness, is the next game. Because tonight you have all the adrenaline playing at home at Madison Square Garden. You have a dip probably in game 2 before you go on the road. So winning tonight would go a long way to them winning it. And kind of, look, I wrote in the blog, look, my head says Tampa in 6. My heart says Rangers in 7. I want to give it back to them for what they did at MSG in game 7 in 2005, because they took a team that basically had beaten them soundly in game 6 and completely basically neutralized them totally in a 2-zip loss. I do think if the Rangers get home for a game 7, the home ice advantage does play a part at MSG, because that place will be going absolutely crazy, especially since in 2015, I think it was expected. This year, none of this is expected, and I think the crowd is going to be reacting accordingly, not expecting it, and trying to push these guys forward to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Although, Jan, you'll probably agree with this. Hold on. I think the Rangers win 2015 if McDonough plays that game.
And Zuccarello's healthy and every other defenseman.
No, but that was a big
one
thing.
leg.
The minute you knew McDonough wasn't playing, that was massive.
Right.
Like that, because he tried to play and he couldn't do it in warm-up.
They froze the foot and he couldn't play.
Right. I do want to point out that I picked the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup before the season started.
You did.
So it was.
You picked Ilya Sorokin as the Vezina winner also. So we kind of.
I have 3 of the final 4 teams in my preseason prediction were there.
So are you going with your head or your heart here, Jan?
My heart. I'm taking Rangers in 7.
My only defense is I haven't picked against the Rangers or the Avs the entire playoffs. I just don't have those 4 teams there. So I'm going to go Rangers in 7 because I think home ice matters. And I think like in that 2015, I was just on another show this morning. I think the Rangers are the Tampa of then, and Tampa is the Rangers of then, because they are the veteran team, and McDonough does have a lot of mileage on them, and that's why you want this series. If I'm the Rangers, I want it to go to 7 because Tampa already is banged up. Now, they had 9 days off, and they will come out rusty, but I think they're still going to have some minor issues.
But another thing we've seen with this Tampa team over and over and over again in their all of their Stanley Cup runs is them lose the first game of series. It's like it's not something they've done it over, and it's almost like Cooper, like they go out there and play like it's like an experiment to see what they're going to do, and then Cooper looks at where, you know, what's this matchup going to be like? Okay, the first game we'll just go play our game, and then then the adjustments are made after game 1 every time.
Cooper can make adjustments. But if Shesterkin is shutting him down, it does neutralize a lot of what a coach can do.
Yeah, I'm going with Jan's head rather than Jan's heart. I'm going with Tampa in 6. I think the Rangers could win it, and if it gets to a game 7, honestly, what I think is one key matchup that people are overlooking. Everybody's saying Shesterkin versus Vasilevsky. I actually think that the fourth line matchup, even though they're not going to play a lot of ice time, Perry, Maroon, and I think Belmar have been they were factors in the Toronto series. Perry was a factor on the power play, and when he jumped up in the lineup in the Florida series, them matching up Russ against like Goudreau and Reeves. I mean, Reeves sometimes can be a liability out there because he tries
Reeves out there, but him, Reeves, Mott. I'll tell you, I'll match up that fourth line of the Rangers with those guys because Goudreau, even though he is playing a little impaired and he's not winning faceoffs, he's blocking shots, and he is making a big difference. He actually got rid of that whole Jordan Stahl matchup problem.
And and on the PK as well. He's been really good in the PK.
Yeah.
All right.
I get it. I get why people are thinking that, hey, the Rangers can't do this because it's Tampa. I just got a text. Tampa's not going to lose more than one game the rest of the way. I get all of that stuff. I do. But this Ranger team, we've been saying it for months, even though we did kind of scoff at Eck earlier. I would say a month or two after that, we all started to say, hey, it wouldn't shock us if they got to this point. And I think now that they've gotten to this point and they're, sort of healthy other than Lindgren, Tampa's got their hands full. This is not going to be easy for Tampa.
I know. I want to be that person who's wimpy and says that I picked Tampa in this series, even though I picked the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup at the beginning of the season.
Oh, come on.
No, that honestly is what I feel because I didn't think Tampa would be as good as they are right now. And
you do it, Eck. It's up to you.
No, I mean I am picking Tampa in this series, and I want the Rangers to win the series because of what I said in the beginning of the year. But I do think
this is the curse. He's picking Tampa so they lose.
I picked both teams here. Basically, there's no way. I mean, I picked the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup. They're doing this. I picked, and I picked Tampa. So I'm picking Tampa.
You have every right to change.
I just wanted to keep that thing I had up on the screen there. I'm really mad at you, Anthony, for putting that up because I'm tired of the old 70 to 80% of the time teams win game 1, they win the series. I mean, the Rangers, if nothing else, have shown that's completely ridiculous, and they continually come behind.
It's on average, but clearly it doesn't mean that as much series to series because weird things do go on. I agree.
To me, that's like saying, if we're each walking to the market and you take 5 steps, you leave 5 steps before me, you're 70% of the time you're going to show up before me because you left before me. It's just the reality is you get a head start if you win a couple games.
Because I think I could walk faster than you, but I get it.
You can walk faster than me. There's no way. But anyway, that's fine.
I do have to run to do another show.
All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Remember, without the buzz, and we will talk about St. Louis tomorrow, guys, for sure. That extension is really an interesting one to get into. We'll get into it tomorrow with Montreal. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. See you then.